All right, everybody, another episode of the Ice Team podcast. We got two awesome guests with us. Many of you might know them if you follow the social media channels. These two guys fish a ton, not just ice fishing, year-round fishing, doing a lot of great things for the industry. We're going to get into some of that. So without further ado, you guys all know this stud to my right, Mr. Aspinwall. But we got Ray and Phil across from us here. I'm going to let them jump into a little bit of their story, a little bit of their background, what makes them tick in this world of ice fishing, and jump on in. Ray, why don't we start with you? Maybe let our listeners know who you are, a little bit about yourself, maybe precursor to who you are and who you represent first and why you're here, and then we'll jump back into, young Ray chasing big fish.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you, Matt and Drew, for the opportunity to be here. It's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Ray Ruiz, I'm the founder, executive director of Baztec Fishing. We're out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Founded in 2017, and we are a community-based outreach organization. And really proud to say the following, that we, in 2023, last year, we facilitated, put on and facilitated over 55 fishing outreach events in the community.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I will say this, I can't thank you enough for this clam support, for your support, for believing in us and sponsoring us and supporting us. We're going to be, those numbers are going to jump, now that we have that support on the ice fishing, because the open water fishing, we've done really well, but when it comes to ice fishing, we didn't have the proper support, but now with clam behind us, I think we're going to do some really great things in the community. So
yeah. And maybe let our listeners know a little bit about your target audience.
Sure.
Let them know kind of, the communities you're going into, because you've told me all the stories and the different things you've done, and it's awesome. It's amazing. Maybe fill them in a little bit about that too. Yeah.
So Baztec started a long time ago. So when I first started fishing, when I started doing tournaments and, traveling all over, there wasn't a lot of folks that looked like myself and looked like Phil. And that's okay, because, like my dad said, fish don't care what you look like, where you come from. So it makes it very equitable that way. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I did see folks out in the community that looked like me, but spoke Spanish, the Spanish-speaking community. Mm-hmm. And this idea came over me where I'm like, man, there's no ambassador, there's nothing, nobody really leading the way, no one being the tip of the spear, to really educate folks in the community.
Sure.
So I said, why not? Why not give this a try? So I literally, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't know what I was doing, man.
Oftentimes none of us do.
Yeah, man. So I started developing a small business plan, and I started talking to other entrepreneurs, and it was tough because I knew pro anglers, and they were awesome guys, but what I wanted to do was a lot different. It was more on the educational side, because going to a novice angler, right, a single mom or a person of color that speaks Spanish, as an immigrant that loves fishing, but grew up fishing with what they call an atarraya, which is a net, and he had him a fishing rod. Hey, we're going to go flip grass on this weed edge. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might as well be talking a different language to them, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I needed to take I need to reevaluate things. So I started at the ABCs of fishing, where tying knots, how to properly cast. Okay, you're from a different country. What is legal? What is a possession limit?
Mm-hmm.
What is the season like?
Yeah.
How much does a license cost? Where can you buy one? All those little things that everyone here knows really well, but the communities from other parts, of the world, wherever they're from, they just don't have that awareness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We take it for granted sometimes.
Yeah. And it's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but I saw a need basically in the community. So I started building awareness. That's where I started building awareness with creating videos, how-to videos, like you see all over the internet now. And I didn't reinvent the wheel here, but there was nobody doing that in the Latino community with fishing. So that's basically how the origins of Baztec started. And from there, what's funny is as I went through that journey, through that process, I got a phone call, knock on the door. hey, we're the Minnesota DNR. We love the work you're doing. Would you like doing it for us?
Yeah.
Come on over here. And I was like, what's going on? You know, so when that happened, I knew I had something.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I always knew I had something, but then I was like, whoa, the DNR just like knocked on my door. It was really humbling. It was really cool. And I started doing outreach work for the DNR, which I'm really proud of the work we did there. And I, after COVID, I decided, you know, it's time for me to branch out and just do this more full time. Cause I was kind of working full-time career and trying to do Baztec fishing on the side. And it was really challenging.
Yeah.
You know, for all entrepreneurs out there, they know what I'm talking about. You know, it's really, you got to make a decision. You know? So I decided, hey, it's time to make that change, and I'm glad I did. So that's basically the origins. That's how it all started, you know, for me. But you know, when people ask me, how did Ray Ruiz? That's probably the question you want to ask me, man. Like, Ray, how did you get started, right? Fishing. My old man. Mm-hmm. My old man was he was an avid angler. He grew up in Poncitlán, Jalisco, which is near, just northeast of Puerto Vallarta, Guadalajara, which is the second largest city of Mexico. He grew up in a small town, and he fished the river systems there, and he was really good at it, man. This is the kind of guy that used like spears, nets. He used a slingshot to shoot birds. The dude was a savage. I'm telling you, I seen him do it, man.
Yeah,
it's now. You know, his eyes are not the same. You know, he's in his 70s, so you know. But he passed on that knowledge to my brothers and I, and it's a real honor. And I know you have your sons, and to watch them, I've seen your sons and the way you've developed them and your kids. I mean, I think of myself when I was their age, and I'm like, man, Matt's like my dad. Like he's doing what my dad used to do. You know what I mean? So it really means a lot watching you and watching all the other dads in the community do the same thing. So that's how I got started, man. And I really got literally, pun intended, hooked. Yeah. And it went from, you know, a hobby to an obsession. Yeah. I got obsessed with everything, with every single thing when it came to fishing. And now, you know, here I am with you fine folks, and just again happy to be here, man.
What kind of stuff did your dad? What did you catch in Mexico? Like, what were you targeting for species?
So, like when I talked to my dad about that, they have different carp species. They have what's the other one? They have tilapia. Oh yeah, they have different tilapia down there. They have like these different kind of. It almost looks like an alewife, you know, like sardine kind of looking. They have like different fish. They're called charales. Mm-hmm. Those are really good. They catch them with nets and they fry them up. Throw some lime, salt, and
it sounds good.
Hot sauce, and they serve it with a cold beer. Yeah. You know, so so he grew up with those kind of species, catfish. There's different kinds of catfish down there, different kind of carp, and that's what he grew up fishing for. They also have a bass, like a certain type of bass down there. I think it's like a white bass. Okay. You know, down in Mexico. Obviously they have Guadalupe bass, which is a largemouth bass. Yeah. They have some of those. They call those lisas. Lisas? Lisas. Yeah, largemouth bass. Lisas. Yeah. You know, so he grew up fishing for those particular species of fish, man. And, you know, it's different because, like, when I was a kid, I was about your kid's age. You know, how old is your youngest?
Callie's 8.
Yeah, I was around that. I was about that age. My dad took me fishing in Lago de Chapala, which is a big lagoon in Mexico. And I had my rods and reels. And the dudes on the boat were looking at me all weird. And I'm looking around the boat. You know, and I'm like, man, these dudes ain't got no rods or reels. How you gonna catch fish? To my surprise, my dad just kind of like, just wait. So then I'm like, just patiently waiting. I'm like, all right, when do I get the cast? Because I had a beetle spin on, and you know, throwing the beetle spin, man, classic, baby. And I think I also had a ribbon worm, Berkeley ribbon worm. Yeah. You know, another classic bait. And those guys were like, yeah, hold on for a second. Got a net, threw it over their shoulder, rolled it back up, and then just fish flopping all over the boat. And then my dad's like, yeah, they don't use rods around here, son.
Funny. Have you gone down there again and done any fishing now that, I mean, to your advantage and your acclamation, you professionally bass fished for many years too.
Yeah,
so
we did.
Have you gone back down as, let's call it, a professional angler and fished some of those rivers and stuff as an adult and seen?
I wish, you know, I talked to my dad about that, and a lot of, you know, sadly, I will say, you guys, Mexico, was a lot of folks that were in power, were politicians and stakeholders, really didn't care too much about the resources. So when my dad's 70, going to be 75, I believe. So when he was a young man, he was like 10, 12 years old, fishing and hunting down there. It was just flourishing. The resources were just full of, fish and different kind of wildlife. But now, fast forward, those resources are not there anymore.
Yeah.
So now I have to go to the resorts, where
Stocked fish.
Exactly. So unfortunately, Chapala, the lake I was mentioning, I have gone fishing there, but I don't take any rods. I just go with the guys. The guides are like, hey, they put me on fish. Yeah. So it's a lot different fishing than we do here in the States.
Sure.
So back to Baztec here, Ray. So through Ice Team, Clam, everything that we do here, we're always on like the bubble of like education, like 101 versus like cutting edge, the latest and greatest, strategies, this and that. And a lot of times we forget, like, some people just want to know how to tie a fishing knot for an ice fishing jigger. What do I use, fluoro or mono? Like stuff that it's just instant. We don't even think about anymore. Like, what kind of stuff like that do you go through at one of your events when you're getting someone else into fishing? Because I know that for us, it's a lot of times we're always on that limbo, and both are super important. So,
right. Yeah, that's such a great question. We keep it very simple. So when folks that come to our events, participants, you'll have 3 generations of folks there. So you have mom and dad, their kids, and sometimes you have a grandma or grandpa there. So you'll have at least 2 generations of folks. And a lot of the folks there have done some fishing, from where their country of origin, if you will. But again, going back to what Matt was talking about, like the fishing was it's so different. It's with nets or with a pop can or something, it's not a rod and reel setup. And what we try to do is I actually go through what a rod and reel is, what literally the anatomy of the rod and reel. Yeah. This is your handle. This is your manivela. This is how you turn it. So this is your drag system. This is what it does. Because people have no idea. And even on a basic like spin caster, they have no idea how it works. What guides are, what footings are. Why are those things there? And, so we go through all that and people are like, oh, okay. It's like when you buy a car, like here's, no one's got to tell you here's a steering wheel, right? But now, like, you don't even have keys for cars, man. Yeah. My truck has a key. Yeah. But the other trucks don't have keys, man. So like, you don't have. They just have to walk you through that, right? So, Drew, to your question, like keeping it simple, basic knots. We show 1 knot, usually with a polymer knot. Yep. And what we do is we'll use like a ring, like a big ring, exaggerated ring that basically duplicates the eye of the hook. Yeah. And I'll bring a big old hook from like a swim bait, so I can show folks. Then we use rope. Yeah. Like twine, like real, like silk rope, and we'll tie the knot so people can see it. And then we'll use mono, and then we'll use braid. And then we ask people, hey, which one did you like more? They're like, oh, I love the braid more. It's more pliable. And then what we'll do sometimes, when seminars indoors, I'll have a fan, and I'll have like you and I will be tying a knot, and we'll blow the fan on your hands so you can simulate when it's windy out and you're actually fishing, so you can actually see what happens. Yeah. Because you don't know what's going to you don't know what's going to happen out there, and people love that stuff. They love competing against like their significant other or 2 brothers or sisters competing against one another. So we really go real basic knots, a 10-2 cast, like a 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, release point.
So you guys are like the catalyst, like the platform that gets people into fishing so then they can continue to learn from there, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's basically everything's fundamentals. Basics and fundamental, that's what we call it. And then from there, when you finish the 101 stuff, then we can go to 102. And then if you really want to start learning other things from there, once you learn a basic how to like a live, like a bobber system, like a slip bobber system. So learning how to properly adjust it and learning, okay, now do you want to fish for walleye with that slip bobber system? Oh, I can do that? Yeah. You can do that. Yeah. We're going to have to change your hook, and we're going to have to use a leech. Ooh, that's gross. Yeah. So it's baby steps, little by little.
It's kind of cool how, like, no matter what you're doing, if you just slow down and learn, like, don't just jump into it and fail. That's important. Yes. To take that leap, but like, just sit down, go to the class, learn. like I was talking to people who were like, I'm getting into ice fishing. And I was thinking like, how do you get into ice fishing? Like really, if I didn't know a thing, like, am I going to go on YouTube and just start watching like influencer videos? I don't know if that's the best way. It's really entertaining and you learn a lot. But like, if I want to learn, I can actually walk on the ice. How many inches of ice? How do I drill a hole? Like that stuff's really important and can help, push you to the next level.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next question is, and this probably segues into Phil too on the ice fishing side, right? Like Phil's one of our ice fishing professionals here at Clam. But so little Ray back home, you didn't ice fish. I'm going to assume in Mexico, you were not ice fishing.
No, not ice. Yeah.
Short answer, no.
As Baztec, I know ice fish has become a huge sector of what you guys do.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'm intrigued. You mentioned you have, Spanish-speaking anglers who come from different countries that maybe used a pop cane, maybe did the netting thing, the spearing, whatever. How do you navigate the ice fishing side of it? Because that's got to be so foreign.
It is
to some of your group members.
Yes.
That ice fishing,
right?
Total crazy idea.
Yeah.
But it's one of your faster growing categories within your organization. So
it's crazy. That's a great question, Matt. And here's what we leverage. And this is going to sound really simple, but people are so fascinated by ice. Human beings through existence have always lived near or around or on water, from Native Americans to other tribes all over the world. And when you go to these Latin American countries, they've never seen ice except for in a drink or in a cocktail or something, Or so when these folks from another country come to the States, there's a couple things that happen. They're looking for things to do, right? They have friends who are American that tell them, oh yeah, hey, what's that big thing right there? Oh, that's a lake. What? Yeah, but I saw a truck on it. Oh yeah, people are out there ice fishing or snowmobiling. People are like, you do that here? And they're surprised. But what happens is they get curious. They're like, well, I want to go try that.
Yeah.
I want to go bring my kids to do that, right? So that's where that curiosity, once you tap into that curiosity, Matt, that's where everything kind of starts happening. And the coordinators, my partners, the coordinators from, big shout out to Dakota County, Anna Ferris, excuse me. She's so good at identifying and tapping into that curiosity with folks. Because some people are terrified, man, of ice. Like my aunt, Marta, when I told her she was on ice, she started screaming like a lunatic and running the other way. I was like 11 years old. And I said, hey, take a walk with me over here. And I'm not going to get into too many details, but she was like really upset. And she was like, I could have fallen, I could have drowned. And I'm like, you're fine. It's 3 feet of ice here. You're fine. Yeah. But that's what we tap into. It's the curiosity. And a lot of the folks in this community, they like trying new things. They don't want to be excluded, and not that people are excluding anybody, but they want to be part of it. They want new experiences for them and their children.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The first step of ice fishing is walking out, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going through that conundrum right now across the ice belt.
Yes.
So much negative publicity around just ice fishing and the weather and stuff, but little do they know that there are 100% situations right now that are, kind of sketchy, but there is so much safe ice if you take the right precautions.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it, here we are into January, and one of my favorite times to ice fish is early ice, first ice. We get excited for it. We get to experience that twice this year. Mm-hmm. I got to do the first ice thing a few weeks ago in the Twin Cities. Loved it. Fish were snapping. And to Drew's point, spud bar, ice picks, float suit, teamwork, right? You do all the necessary things. Ice fishing is a very safe sport if you use a little common sense and do it right. And guess what, Phil? We get to have first ice again here in the next week in the Twin Cities. And to me, that half glass full mentality, to me, that's exciting. Never in my lifetime have I got 2 first ice experiences in one ice fishing season. Wow. And here we are. We're going to have first ice again. We got cold weather popping in. Lakes are locking back up. We got some rain, some warm weather. The lakes opened up to some degree. And here we are in the next week or days. I think we're going to have those lakes locking back up, and you can see anglers back on the ice doing what we do best. And in a couple weeks' time, it'll be back to where we want to be. So, which leads us right into our buddy Phil. Phil, you've been way too. This is the quiet I've seen Phil Biden
Can I tell
my
a funny
entire
I want
life.
to tell a funny story
Go
about
for
Phil
it.
really quick. So, Phil, you were working the state fair this year with us at the clam booth, quick sets, everything. And my introduction to Phil that day, I've met you many times before, but you came back to the booth with like 2 big slices of pickle pizza at like 9 a.m. on like a Thursday. I'm like, dude, already pizza? He goes, yeah, dude, I was the first one in line, man. Oh, it's the best pizza ever, man. You want a bite? I'm like, no, dude. I'm trying to eat, mini donuts or something right now. So anyways, that's Phil. Phil's super interesting. All right, Phil, continue with who you are and what you do and how you got involved with everything.
All right.
Pickle
Well,
pizza, Phil.
Yeah, he likes pickled pizza too.
so actually, my name is Phil Bidon. It's
Aw.
French Canadian.
Yeah.
My dad's French Canadian. My mother's Mexican. But people always say Bidon. I'm used to it. I'm been mispronounced. all my
Smelly
life.
jelly.
Smelly jelly.
That was
That
your
goes
nickname?
that goes way back.
yeah.
Another story.
But anyway, I grew up on the east side of St. Paul. My mother always said I was born with a fishing pole in my hand because I absolutely loved to fish. Always loved to fish and so forth. I was lucky enough to grow up by a lake called Lake Phelan Lake, and grew up about 3 blocks away from the lake. And that's where my mom and dad would always find me, is at Phelan Lake, goofing off. Phelan Lake, you can basically walk around it and fish 90% of it by shore fishing and so forth. And that's what I did. Fished Lake Phelan, Keller Lake, and Jarvis Lake.
Yeah.
That's where I always was fishing. And then my dad, he was a workaholic. He worked a lot, but he always made time during the summer and so forth to take, I have an older brother, and he'd take me and my brother. He had a 5-horse Sea King that was his dad's. And we went to Jarvis Lake where you could rent boats, and we'd rent a boat and with the 5-horse Sea King, and we would clobber the sunfish years ago using corn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also fished bald eagle and big marine.
Yeah.
And I so looked forward to fishing with my brother and my dad. I just remember when I was small, maybe like 13 or 12 or 13, and he walked into the living room, and my mom and my brother were watching TV, and then my dad goes like this, meaning we're going fishing tomorrow. Yeah. Oh my God, I couldn't sleep, just restless, and just always looked forward to fishing. And then my mother, again, she's Mexican Latino, she had 11 brothers and sisters. So my uncles, they were big into fishing as well. So I had the best of both worlds. So my dad always took me fishing, and then my uncles, the Romeros, they took me fishing as well. So
yeah. I think the first time you and I met, I think was on Bald Eagle. I think it was on a fishingminnesota.com get together.
it was either Bald Eagle or White Bear Lake.
Yeah, White Bear, Bald Eagle, Phelan. We did them all over on those metro things, and I remember we went fishing way back, and this is way pre-social media.
That Smelly Jelly era.
That MJ5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember some of those years. The Phelan, the Jarvis, the Keller, that intrigues me because, they still have fish in them. Do you still frequent some of those bodies of water, or have you kind of left them alone, or?
No, I ice fish them a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really
still
do.
halfway decent. I mean, I'm sure there's some stunted fish in there now. I mean, I feel like the last time I fished Phelan, I caught a lot of stunted fish, but they're still kind of hidden gems, right? So if you got anglers in that area, I wouldn't look past them as a good opportunity to go out there, learn some things, get your feet wet, catch a few fish. Now you might sort through a lot of small ones, but still very entertaining.
It is. That lake's great. It has a lot of great structure. It's deep, easy to get to. Of course, you can't drive on it.
Yeah.
You have to walk on it and so forth and pull your gear. But yeah, my parents, my father, my mom passed away 3 years ago, but my dad still lives in the same house I grew up on. And after work, I'll go fish Phelan after I'm done, and then I'll stop at the old man's house and chit chat with him and so forth. So it's super great memories for me. I'm so lucky to grow up by Lake Phelan. I just that lake has a special spot in the heart right there. Yeah,
sure, man.
Yeah, I remember I fished it one time, and I vaguely remember this. We did it was an event with the Boys and Girls Club of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they partnered up, and we went out of the is it the west side? There's like a pavilion and a facility where people can go inside. They had hot chocolate and stuff. Remember, we went out there and we caught some sunfish, and it was a very entertaining. I think as anglers, I think all four of us probably would agree with this. We have so many great fisheries in the Twin Cities area, so many. And I think we oftentimes look to drive as far away from the Twin Cities as we can to go fishing. And I think the Crappie Chronicles opened some people's eyes to some of that as well. Like, hey, we have really good fishing for even big fish in the Twin Cities, and sometimes you just got to maybe put a little work in, maybe check that lake down the street from your house. You might be surprised. There was one body of water, I remember when I was a kid, that we fished. This lake's like 60 acres, and it wasn't far from where I grew up, maybe a half an hour. And we heard rumors of big crappies, and I'm like, not a chance. That thing's 68. I mean, it's tiny, right? We went out there and we caught some like 14-inch class crappies, and never to this day have we done it again on that lake. But that just shows you, like, you never know what's there. Bald eagle, white bear. My dad grew up in Shoreview, so he would fish some of those bodies of water as well. And he always told me that there was is it called Sucker Creek?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it connects to like Vadnais and all that chain. We would go there and fish as kids and catch all kinds of stuff. Nothing ever remarkably huge. My dad used to brag about, you should have seen the size of the fish we caught when I was a kid, right? And I'm always like, okay, I've heard my dad talk enough to know, divide everything in half. It's probably about where things are. But Phil, maybe let people know a little bit, about your position with us at Clam. So not only are you helping Ray with Baztec and doing other things, but you've been doing a ton of work with us on the Clam side, working sport shows, working events. One of the beauties, I think, of you coming on board our team, and I'm going to guess that's why you gravitated to Ray and vice versa, is your educational side in the ice fishing world. Does that ever get boring?
It doesn't. I love it. I love helping people, teaching people, educating people how to fish, what lures to use, just telling my stories and so forth. I love it. I was just at Fleet Farm a couple days ago, and there was a mom and her child, a kid, looking at the ice fishing rods and so forth. And I let them be. I just kind of watch them out of the corner of my eye and so forth. And clearly she had really no idea where to start. And she was looking at the spring bobber and she was hitting it. And then, of course, the boy had a big lure, a big jig that was too heavy for that rod and so forth, for that spring bobber, for that type of application and so forth. So I said, hey, if you don't mind, just let me educate you a little bit about the rods and reels and so forth and what they're used for. This is an inline reel. This is an open face. This is the application that you would use and so forth. And I just love it.
Yeah.
Ray and I were at Cabela's, what was it, a couple of weeks ago when we stopped and got our big clam order.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And we were looking at the Tika Flash.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
This gentleman was standing next to me, and he's looking at me, and he sees my hat. He goes, you know anything about the Tika Flashes? I said, sure do. I said, it's the hottest lure out there right now. And he goes, what about the pinhead? He goes, there isn't anybody on the pro staff I know that doesn't have a pinhead in their box. I literally said that. And he looks at me, he goes, well, what color? And I grabbed 3 colors for him, and he says, I got to stop there. My wife doesn't know I'm here. Buying lures.
I can hide $20. Yep. I can't hide 100.
Right.
Yep. So to answer your question, it never gets old. I love working the shows. I just love talking to people.
Phil, you're also pretty close with our lead designer of ice armor and Blackfish, Sean, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Because you guys live by each other and have a little history or something like?
We do. We only live like 3 miles from each other and so forth. And my wife and his family will go out and go out to eat and so forth in Lake Elmore, Stillwater.
Yeah.
Have a Ham's beer or something.
Yeah.
Green Belt.
Yeah, Sean will make you drink that old Milwaukee stuff.
Yeah.
We were talking, I remember earlier this season, because we get our game plan, like for the St. Paul Ice Show, for example, like the pros that we have working the show, we have them in areas where they'll excel and they're really knowledgeable and stuff. And I remember talking to Sean Like, yeah, Sean, you got to get your ice armor section ready. And he's just like, gimme Phil.
Yeah.
That's all I need is Phil.
Yeah.
He goes, where's Phil going? He's coming with me.
He did actually say that. Yeah. I mean, I think when we first added you to the pro staff, like I had known you for decades, 20 plus years. And I remember it was on the clothing side of things. And it was Sean who was like, oh, I should introduce you to my buddy Phil. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And he didn't say last names or nothing. There's a million Phils, right? And not as cool as you, but and I'm like, yeah,
Phil the Thrill.
Well, and then I think he sent me an email and copied you.
Yep.
And I'm like, Phil, I know that last name. Like, I think I even replied to the email like, is this Smelly Jelly?
You did.
And I'm
Yep.
like, Sean, I know this guy extremely well. We've been friends for a long time.
God.
And the rest was history. And we did kind of bring you on as a clothing specialist because you had helped Sean in a past life at some of his other companies, help him move some of the sales and some of the suits. And it worked out pretty good. But yeah, it is fun. And I'll tell you what, at the sports shows, Ray worked our booth at the show this year as well. It's not for the faint of heart when you send a guy like Phil into a retail store at a sports show. Like, I have the utmost respect for our pro staff that go to the Thorne Brothers, the Reeds, the Marine Generals, the Joes, the Up North Sports, right? All those. It is a lot of work, especially at the St. Paul Ice Show.
You got to hustle. You got to move. You got to answer questions. And
Yeah.
I think every time I walk by Phil, even at some of the slower shows, you just had a big smile on your face. Man, it's going good. We got people coming through. I'm like, yeah, kind of, but like, I love the the upbeat attitude. That goes a long way. I think it shows.
Yeah. Phil usually has a pretty positive attitude. I don't see. Do you get
try
mad?
to.
Do you get mad often? I don't feel like you do.
honestly, no. No, I
And
really
I
don't.
100% believe you.
I'm easygoing.
Yeah.
Yep.
We were at the state fair 2 years ago. You worked like 5 days for us, and you had 1 day off, and you came through with some of your coworkers, 2 gals that you came through with, and they were involved in ice fishing. I could say, I wouldn't say that they weren't experts, right? They kind of leaned on you to and show them some stuff. And man, it was like, that was a very entertaining half an hour.
Oh yeah.
Like we were having a good time. And did they ever get out that year and chase fish?
We didn't get out that
'Cause
year.
I think I was supposed to come with and help.
Correct.
And it never happened.
It
So
didn't happen.
probably my fault.
Part of it. So
all right, so we got both background stories. Ray, Phil, how did this synergy happen? Let's talk about that.
I'm gonna lean on Phil for that one because I got a message from Phil, but Phil, I think you tell the story a lot better than I do. So
you start, I'll finish.
yeah. So I was at home one day and I got a message on Facebook Messenger, which I usually don't use Messenger much, but I saw it and I saw it, heard the ping, and I was like Phil Bidon. I was like okay. Not spelled the same, but I was like, okay. I was like, and then I replied to him, and I replied to Phil, and he just said, hey man, I love the work you're doing in the community. Would love to, opportunity to connect with you and like chat with you about some stuff. When are you open? And I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. And I always, I always really respect and like the fact that somebody, proactively does something, and they do it authentically. You know what I mean? It's not a cold call. Hey, would you like to buy some insurance? You know what I mean? Or it didn't feel like that. It was really authentic, and Phil's a great guy. We become really good friends. So when I saw the message, I was like, yeah, let's see where this conversation leads. And so I replied, and then I think we scheduled a phone call, and Phil can take the story from here, I guess.
Yeah, well, just to echo what Ray say, we were friends on Facebook and so forth, and I'd see his content on Facebook and Instagram, and I'd follow it. And he took the group of kids to Lake Phelan and so forth, and I'm like, man, that's my lake. You know what I mean? That's cool. The outreach programs there, and they're teaching young kids how to fish. And I'm like, I'd like to do that, and I'd like to be involved with that. And I, throughout the summer, again, I was read his content on Facebook and so forth, and hoping one day that him and I can join forces and so forth, and make a difference out there. And reached out to him. Well, we saw him at the Blaine show.
The Blaine show, yeah.
And that's when I, came up to you and said, "Hey, this guy, mi amigo here. What's the scoop with him? Give me the lowdown." And we briefly talked and so forth. And I reached out to him, and we had a phone call, and we talked for over an hour.
Yeah.
And we were talking about joining forces, and he told me his vision, he told me my vision, and they were really aligned really well. And here we are, here we are with, we just formed Baztec Ice Team.
Yeah. And I remember vividly at the Blaine show, like you came up to me because I think Ray, Diana,
Diana
and
comes
Addie and myself had a little powwow.
Yes.
We didn't have a ton of time, but we wanted to meet you. We did some Zoom calls and all this, and we had a great introduction. And you kind of slid off and started looking at product, and then Phil runs over like a kid at Christmas. Do you know that guy? I'm like, yeah, we just talked to him. He goes, that's Ray. He's like, and you looked at me. I remember you with conviction. You're like, I want to help him out. And it wasn't like pipe dream, right? Like he just feels like, I want to help him out. I think that would be epic. And I think it was a week later, you're like, yeah, we're going to join forces. So that's a pretty cool story. I mean, I think
were standing there as well.
Yeah, I was watching. I didn't realize what was really going on. I was just kind of bystander. And I was like, there's a connection here. I can see how this, and then here we are, I guess, fast forward.
Yeah.
Ray and Phil.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I mean, I think, I'm still naive to all the events you put on because I 55, dude.
It might be more. I think it's
crazy.
more. I think it's more, but it's over 50, close to 60. Yeah.
Like, first of all, thank you. Like you probably don't even realize it. I'll toot your own horn. Like the people you're touching. Like I think at every event anyone does, whether it's Baztec, whether it's Clam, whether it's Ice Team, whether it's Baztec Ice Fishing, whatever. There's always somebody that's not at the event that gets touched by that event still, because you're teaching that kid or that family about fishing or ice fishing or whatever. And almost always that person is probably going to spill over onto someone else, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be in their community. The topic of fishing might come up. Mm-hmm. And then that family might go, you know what? I was just taught a polymer knot the other day. And you're going to teach, and that person's going to go, what's a polymer knot? Like, well, let me show you. Or, hey, you know what? Did you know that this or this or this? And I think the events are wonderful. And I always tell people, like, I've had some people come back after an event. They're like, 12 kids showed up. It wasn't that many kids, and I can sense they're a little down. And I've always been like, no. There's exponential growth with those 12 kids. Mm-hmm. So, and that's where, Tiny Soapbox, like every kid matters, right?
Right.
Because that one kid may go home and you never know. You never know like how many kids he influences in his community or in his classroom, because he shows a passion for something that these 10 kids just go, whoa.
Right.
So 55 events, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
That hands-on real life learning is invaluable, in my opinion. Like you learning how to use the net with your dad in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking of times where I've learned how to slip bobber a leech on Mille Lacs, or like throw a swim bait. Like I can read about that stuff and watch videos, but till you actually do it and like feel the bite or tie the knot or throw the net or whatever it is, like you just can't really replicate it. And people don't have the means to just go do that, like they might never know how to even, like, what can I buy? Can I tie this knot on a bait casting reel? Like, I have no idea, but once you show them, then they're locked for life almost.
Yeah.
That stuff's super important.
Yeah, it is. It's skills that you, like, if you show someone just one knot, there's a old martial arts saying, don't be afraid about the guy who knows 100 kicks. Be afraid of the guy who knows one kick really, really, really well. Yeah. Because he'll land it every time, Mm-hmm. If you show someone one knot really well, all they need is one knot. Like, for example, we go throughout the events, I'll tell people 90% or 80% of the time, pro anglers, if they're fishing a heavy cover, they will always use this polymer knot. And they're like, really? Yep, this is what they use. You are wearing, Michael Jordan wore Jordans, right? He does what he does with his Jordans. Now, I can't throw Jordans on and do that. Yeah. But you could do that with a polymer knot. Yeah. You could put it on a EWG hook or any kind of hook, get on a body of water, and flip grass. Yeah. And people are like, wow, I didn't realize, like, that's the hook that, like, Phil Bidon uses or Matt uses for ice fishing. Like these are professional guys. Like, yeah, you know why they use it? Because it works.
Yeah.
That's why they use it. It's incredibly effective. Now you know it. Now you can teach it to somebody else, like what Drew was saying, and so on and so forth. Yeah. It's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
I was one year when I was working at FLW still, it was the year that Mark Rose won AOI, Angle of the Year, and he was talking on stage about he can't, like, he was being very humble, and he was saying, I'm pretty good at fishing essentially, but I got to thank all my other friends here who helped me. Like, I know to tie this knot with this bait because he told me that that's the best way to do it. I fish a wacky rig this way because Larry Nixon does it like that.
Right, yeah.
Like, they're the best at their art, and then you kind of pick up on some of the stuff they do, right? Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, today I'm going to be better at fishing a wacky worm than David Dudley. Like, it's not going to happen. So what do I do? I'm going to try to be like David Dudley. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're spot on. I mean, I look at like hot topic right now, forward-facing sonar. Like, I'm better at using a forward-facing sonar because I spent a little time with Adam Griffith.
Dude, 100%.
Like, watching what he does and how he uses that machine. Same machine. We all have similar machines that we all know what it does. We're all pretty good at it. But then you watch what they do and how they utilize that tool, and you're like, wow. I'm not using this to its best ability. And it's like you said, the same thing where, you know, like Drew taught me a lot about swim baits in the boat. Drew's a swim bait master, and I didn't use them a lot, like big paddle tail, soft plastic swim baits, right? I'm a guide in the Metro. The jig worm and the drop shot and the Ned rig is king, right?
Absolutely.
Or maybe a chatterbait, right? And we'd go fishing a bunch, and Drew would always, pardon my French, pissed me off because he's always like, I just need that one rod. Just give me that rod.
Wow.
You need to catch one quick, just give me that rod. And he'd jack one on this. And then I started playing with it a lot more. And then by the time, fast forward a couple of years now, like, it's become a very powerful tool in my arsenal to go get a big bite. You know, it's crazy. I mean,
I learned swim bait just from other people too, you know, like, and then you build confidence in it and you learn more and you tweak things, and then boom, you're very confident you're catching fish. Just, I mean, to bring it back to Baztec, like, Ray, you'll take people on the ice, right? Ray and Phil, Bass Ice Team, and then they will build confidence in ice fishing, and the next thing you know, they have a great hobby or sport that they can do forever.
Yeah, and people are, you know, they feel limited sometimes too, right? Like open water fishing, right? Well, that's not where fishing starts and ends.
right.
You know what I mean? And that's sometimes part of the building awareness, building that education, right, Phil?
Right.
We talked about that. And just because it's frozen doesn't mean anything. It just means it's frozen.
Yeah.
You know, think about it. What we teach in our seminars is think of the ice as a big vessel. The vessel will take you anywhere you want on the lake. And they're like, oh, yeah, I didn't thought about it like that. Yeah, it's like a big boat. It's just a big hand that you go anywhere you want. You have access to the entire lake.
Levels the playing field.
Absolutely, man.
When I got really into ice fishing was when I got a vehicle that I could drive. And I didn't have a boat, you know, I was in like high school and like early years at college, but I'm like, ice fishing's great. Like, me and the boys can go to any lake we want and we can fish that piece of structure with this little app on my phone that I have that tells me where I'm at. Whereas, like, I don't have a boat to bring around. Like, I can throw this stuff in the back of my car.
Yep.
This is phenomenal.
Yep. I mean, on a more serious note though, Ray, can you use a slingshot?
Can I use a slingshot? Not as good as my dad, but yeah, I can.
I'd love to. I think we go live one time with Ray.
Let's do it.
Hunting with a slingshot, because they're cool.
They're awesome.
Yeah, like real slingshots, like not the one I build in my backyard, like an actual slingshot. It's amazing what they can do. Like, I've seen some real ones. They're pretty impressive. Yeah,
my dad used to, when we were kids, he'd hit the wrist rockets and stuff like that. And back then, he just had the Y, the basic, the cave. I call it the caveman slingshot. Or there's another one called La Honda, which is basically, let's think of a belt, and in the middle of the belt, there's like you would put the rock and you would just swing it. Swing, and you would get it. They use them, I mean, they have them in the Middle East, they have them in Africa, they have them in Latin America, they have them all over the world. But my dad used to use that, man, and they'd whip it and then hit a deer in the head. I'm like, and dude, I used to be like, wait a minute, you used to hit a deer, or you used to hit a duck or whatever, and he's like, yeah, we didn't have, couldn't afford guns, couldn't afford ammo, we're too poor, and I was like, whoa. And, I grew up here. I was born and raised in the States and stuff. And I was born and raised in Chicago. But like hearing my dad tell the stories of how organic it was like growing up. I was like, man, this dude's a savage, man. You know, and then seeing him do it. There's a shout out to some folks that did a special on myself and my dad. It was on PBS, man, and we were out dove hunting. And if you want to see my hunting skills, man, you know how to track a dove at 70 miles an hour. I miss and I shoot at things. I hit it, but it was very humbling. You know, that was a really, really cool experience with my dad. And what was really cool is it was on a hemp field. Yeah, so he was like, ¿Por qué huele a marijuana? Why does it smell like weed? He's old school Mexican dude, and I was like, oh man, this is not gonna be good, man.
PBS television, perfect. It works out.
So he was like, you sure is this legal? You know, my dad was like, yeah, Dad, it's hemp, it's not weed. It smells like it, but if you smoke it, it's not gonna do anything to you.
So talking ice fishing a bit, being an ice team podcast, I'd like to rewind, Ray, to like when you got involved in ice fishing, like some of your first experiences in ice fishing, like what were they? Because I'm guessing like your dad taught you to do the fishing thing, but I'm assuming he didn't teach you to ice fish.
No.
So how did ice fishing come into your life?
That's a great question. So when I grew up in Chicago near Navy Pier before it was gentrified and developed to the Navy Pier now with a Ferris wheel and stuff. So back then you have these. It was just a big old concrete wall where in late March and early April, when it was really cold, ice out, you would have perch come in, heading westbound, you know, and they would stop at the wall and all that sandy bottom. That's where they would, you know, spawn. And that was my first experience ice fishing because there was still ice on Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was cold, man. It was really cold. So that was my first experience ice fishing. And what I remember is just catching jumbo perch 3 at a time with my dad. You know, you were 3 minnows on or 2 minnows, and you just, it was these, you know, those rigs.
Yeah.
What do they call them? I forgot those rigs, what they're called. They look like this.
Yeah, like a dropper rig.
Yeah, they're metal, like
I've
aluminum.
seen them. Yeah.
So you would put those down and, I mean, just like limit out in minutes. It was just thousands of fish down there. So that was my first experience. Then my dad, we had an uncle, may rest in peace, Pablo Carrillo. They call him La Macha because he was just a big dude. And it was a nickname of his. And he had some land west of the cities. And that's when I didn't know you could put a hole in the ice. You know, so he had a hand auger. He had old rusty hand auger, and he put a hole through it, and then he just taught us how to fish. And my dad knew how to do that, but didn't have the equipment.
Yeah.
And so we would go with my uncle, and that was literally the first time I saw that. I don't know, I was maybe like 7 or 8 years old, you know. And then my brother was with me, and I just remember I remember falling, like stepping through a hole, and I was a kid.
Classic.
Yeah.
Every kid must do it.
It boot was full of ice and my foot was cold. And as I got older, I had a friend of mine. We would go to the Chicago River, and it would, you know, like most rivers, partly freeze. And that was the first time I fished down there. And then he and I both fell through at the same day.
Ugh.
And we still kept fishing. But we were teenagers, man. You know, you know how you when you're a teenager.
What'd you catch? Remember?
Yeah, it was full of fish. You catch a perch. We caught smallmouth, catfish, burbot. You know, we catch all kinds of fish down there. Yeah. Oh. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
Phil, when were you first introduced to ice fishing? Were you a young kid as well?
Yeah, I was. I had a neighbor, Ryan Ludeman. He was 2 years older than I was. And he was like a tall farm boy. He was tall. And he bought his first ice house, of course, a wooden bottom, 4 holes. And it was the real, like, army green canvas, like the real green canvas. And we had a white gas stove with the, what do you call it? Chimney and so forth. And we would put the ice house on, do you remember that sled that you would like go on your stomach and you could
oh yeah,
you could steer it this way, like this and this. It had metal
they would like cut your fingers off if it went over the top of you.
That's
I
the
know.
one.
Oh yeah,
That's the one.
Yeah.
Sounds safe.
Oh yeah, it was like literally a solid steel rail.
Runners, yeah,
Oh, man.
exactly. Yep. So he lived 2 doors down from me, and we would use rope, and we would tie the ice house to the sled. And then my first jiggle stick, he took me to Larry's Live Bait on Wiper Avenue,
Yeah,
and it was the one with the nail in it or the pick or whatever you. That was my first ice fishing jiggle stick, and we brought like 3 cans of soup. That was our lunch, and we would so you went downhill. So we got all our equipment on the sled, our ice house, and so forth, and our jiggle sticks in a 5-gallon bucket, of course. That's about it. I mean, that's light, and that's all we had. There was no sonars back then. And,
yeah.
We walked literally 3 blocks downhill to the lake. So it'd be the east side of the lake, and then we went over the west side of the lake by the beach, and that's where we'd fish. And he had a spoon auger, the spoon auger, and we had a file.
Pull a plug out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we would sharpen the spoon type blade, the auger. We would sharpen the auger, and then he'd make me stand on a milk crate because I was a lot shorter than he was, and I could get 3/4 of the hole drilled, and then he'd grab it, and then he'd finish it. Then he'd drill the other 3 holes, and then we'd just set up shop there all day.
Yeah, and you caught fish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It was great. We'd use candles for light and so forth, and the soup cans we'd put on top of the what do you call it, white gas burner, or we'd put soup cans, and about 45 minutes later, you had hot soup.
that's cool. Like, it'd be fun sometimes to go back to the simpler days. I remember when I started ice fishing. We didn't grow up with a boat. My dad didn't fish a lot. We would do, my dad would once in a while would do kind of like your dad. He would come in and be like, want to go fish this weekend? And then that's all I would think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we would do, like, we bought our first fish house. It wasn't a clam. It wasn't any brand. It was Sunday at the St. Paul Ice Show. It used to be called the Winter Sports Show because ice fishing was a very small portion of the show at this time. And I remember we spent all day Saturday and Sunday at the show. And we kept looking at the different fish houses. We didn't have enough money to buy the name brand, but there was one black, literally like nylon pants material flip over. And my dad was kind of pestering the guy that had it in his booth. And the guy's like, no, this is what it costs. And any cheaper? No. Well, then on Sunday we came back, and my dad's like, kept pestering him. I remember the guy finally said, I'll tell you what, when the show is done, I'll sell you that model right there on the floor for whatever price. And my dad's like, done, we'll take it. And we carried that darn thing out of the river center, my dad and I, all the way to our car. He didn't have a van or a truck, a car, and we bungee corded that thing down, and that was the fish house we used. And I remember going to Green Lake in Chisago, and we didn't have a Vexlar. And I remember what opened up my eyes, no pun intended, was the fact that I remember you could look down the hole and see the fish. We'd fish by the power lines on Green Lake in Chisago, and you could see all the bluegills and the crappies swimming down. And I remember looking at my dad, and I'm like, dude, look down the hole. He's like, what? I'm like, look down the hole. He looks down the hole, and we could sight fish. I remember that was the one moment where I'm like, this is awesome. And then you get the tools, the Vexlar at some point, and we all know where we're at now, right?
Right.
But I remember some of those moments, like you said, your neighbor, your buddy, going out fishing, those are situations. I remember, man, and I guess it's long story longer. What I was going with that is I would love to go back to that just for a couple days. The original excitement, and you're creating those stories now for people, right, Ray? The original, like, we don't get our original ice fishing stories back, right?
Right.
They're gone, but we can make some for new people.
Yeah.
And those stories, as simple as it is, looking down a hole in the ice, a soup can on top of a stove with a jiggle stick and a spike, how cool it was for you. Like, now there's kids and there's young adults that they get to experience their first time. And I think sometimes we have to just really take a giant step back and remember that it can be a very simple memory that'll stick with them forever. not a 15-inch crappie or a 10-pound walleye or a 100-fish day. It can be that simple story or that memory where it's like, that was the moment that got you hooked. I think it's awesome.
This weekend, Matt, when Sarah and I were up north, we kind of did almost like that, just in a little more modern way, I guess. Like, because we didn't. So the first time I was on the ice this year, we had machines, snow dogs, forward-facing sonar, cameras, all this jazz, right? And we ran all around it. All it was a lot of work, right? We're working too and stuff. But then last weekend, like, ice was kind of deteriorating around some spots, but I'm like, you know what? I think we got good ice. Like, let's go. We got the spud bar, thrower up, all the stuff, and we drug Nanook, just a small 2-man flip over. This is me and my girlfriend, and I'm like, well, we can walk out to that crappie hole. I'm like, I know where it is. We don't need no map or anything. And so, like, we're walking down the shoreline. I'm spudding my way out, and then I'm like, you know, I think if I recall right, it's like in front of this house, I line up this tree, like, with this cabin, and then I walk out like 200 yards. And, like, we went up to the spot, and I'm like, I think this is about right. Drilled a hole. I'm like, yep, this is the spot. And, like, we flipped it over and, like, got cozy, like, had the heater running, like, the lights. I'm like, this is sweet. Like, I don't have to worry about running around. We're just sitting here in this one spot, and we're going to either catch fish or not. And we caught, like, 6 fish, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
We ran out of propane and then just walked back inside a couple hours later. Like, that was good.
Yeah.
Didn't take my whole day. Didn't take, like, the most effort ever, but, like, still had a good time.
Yeah. Do you remember mantles?
Oh gosh,
I remember there was times like your mantle would crumble in your lantern, and it was like, kill me now.
Yep.
Like, because that was your entire light source, and oftentimes your heat source too. I had a little Coleman lantern that I had a plastic case over the top. You couldn't put the plastic case on after you use it because it was too hot. And I still have rings on my fingers from touching the top and burning my hands. But those darn mantles, like if you would blow on them, they would crumble, and then you had no light. I remember spare mantles some days were worth so much. Like, I would have paid $20 for a mantle that was 99 cents at Sportsman's Warehouse, because without that you had no light. I don't think I've used a mantle-driven light. I take that back. At Sportsman's Lodge, we had one in one of our day houses, which was kind of cool. But I just remember mantles as being everything.
Yep.
Like, that light at night was so
Key.
necessary.
Yep.
Now we just reach down and alligator clip to a battery, and the light bar in our fish trap lights up the whole.
Easy.
Yeah.
No big deal. Cell phone. My cell phone doesn't
Aurora.
light on it.
Aurora lights. Yeah.
That was my first LED light, the Aurora headlamp.
Yeah.
25 years ago? But
Yeah.
it's the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show was blue. I bought 2 of them. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Game changer. I remember, like, talking about fish traps. I remember back in the Fishing Minnesota days, we would do the portable modification get together, which still exists. And you used to go to Menards and buy lights and apparatuses and trick out your fish house. Was it Dan, our buddy Dan, who had the huge solar panel blanket inside of his? I'm talking like light years ahead of technology. A thermal fish trap didn't exist at that point. There wasn't such thing as thermal canvas on a fish house.
Yep.
And I remember he had that aluminum foil looking thermal fabric that he put on the inside of his house. And I remember we're all outside running around, or in our just canvas layered fish house, frosted up. And he went inside his, and it was like tropical rainforest.
It's night and day, yeah.
Yeah.
It reflected the light and it held the heat.
Sure,
yeah.
of course.
I think it's called Flex Tex or something like that. That material. Yep.
Yeah.
But
that was pre-thermal fabric.
Yep.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah, just some of the stuff you see in Days on the Ice. It was fun, and I still think it's amazing how when a tip up goes off, your adrenaline rush was the same it was when you were 8 years old. I don't care if you're 80 or 8 and that flag goes up and you walk up to it and that thing's spinning. I don't care. It will never get old. If it gets old, I probably don't have a pulse.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty entertaining. So this year, Ray, what do you got in the hopper? I mean, I know the ice conditions aren't favorable right this minute, but we're going to get some ice here soon. Like, what do you got cooking if we have listeners that maybe want to attend or get somebody involved in some of the things you're doing? Like, do you have some information you can share now, or is it in the works? Or
we currently have 6 events planned. A lot of them are with Dakota County. So we're going to be doing ice fishing events on Thompson Lake and on Holland where there's trout.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll be out there with my buddy Mario T. Traveling. He's a DNR guy. He's a part of the West Metro Fin fisheries guys.
Yeah. I've met Mario.
Yeah, you met Mario.
Yeah, I know
He's
Mario.
that dude's a savage. He's awesome. He's great. So he'll be out helping us and facilitating, and hopefully, you know, we can hopefully Phil, you know, you could help us out, and any other you know if clan volunteers want to come out and help us facilitate. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have folks from them. I also want to talk about there is an organization. Well, it's a big organization. They work with smaller organizations, and the gist of it is pretty simple. Like, they get folks into literacy, into education. But the cool thing about their program, it's through the University of Minnesota. They help fund a lot of this, and what they do is they provide education and literacy and teaching immigrants how to read, right? But what they teach them is outdoor stuff, outdoor terms and environmental sciences. So it's really cool. So I get a call from one of the gentlemen. His name's Lucas. Shout out to Lucas, super cool dude, and he's in Hawaii right now. By the way, that guy. He's out there for 3 weeks, bro.
Tough.
I know, he's brutal conditions out there. So he reached out to me. He said, "Hey Ray, I got this program. We'd really love to partner with you." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So it'll be Neighborhood House over on the west side of St. Paul that we're going to be working with, and some other organizations, and we're going to be on Thompson Lake.
Okay.
And one of the things, and you touched on it, Matt, like we have 11 in the metro. Just in the metro, we have about 350 something lakes, you know, but immediately you have 11 in St. Paul, 13 in Minneapolis. You get asked all the time. Everyone here gets asked all the time, "Hey man, what's the best lake to go fishing?" And I was like, "Where do you live?" And they're like, "Oh, I live over in I live in West St. Paul, or I live over here. Oh, I live over in Phelan, man. Go to Phelan Lake. That's right by your house. That's literally your best lake.
Yeah.
The one that's the closest by your house."
Yeah.
So when we take these partner organizations out, we try to build that awareness. Like, you don't have, like you were saying earlier in the show, Matt, we don't have to go all the way. We don't have to go to Mille Lacs to catch walleyes, or we don't have to go somewhere far to catch big bass. You can catch them here in the metro.
Yeah.
You know, and people need to really, like, they need to, as leaders in the fishing community, really share that message, you know, and advocate, like, hey, just go to your local lake. That's literally the best place where you can go. You'll learn that lake fast. It's super accessible. You'll get on the ice right away.
Yeah.
You don't have to drive. You don't have to do all this. Nope. Get in your car or walk there, take your bike, whatever the case may be. So that's why these, to your question, these events that we have coming up are so important, because it's not just about ice. It's not just about the fishing or ice fishing. It's showing people or educating them on, like, you don't have to go far. Stay in your community, or you can stay in your community. So it starts with all those little things, and all those little things take care of the bigger things later on, you know. So, but yeah, we have right now we have 6, and I think the reason why is because you know, the conditions were, you know, a little warmer.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to be ramping up. So I think I'm pretty confident we'll have anywhere between 12 to 14 ice fishing events, maybe more this year.
Sure.
So, you guys can visit our website for folks out there that are interested in volunteering. You can go to baztecmn.com, and you can look at what we did last year. And it's a long list, so I apologize you'll see it's a mammoth of a list of events that we did. And this year we have our ice fishing events that we're doing this year currently, and we'll be adding more as as partners. Our community partners let us know, hey Ray, could we do this? Could we do this date, this time? And then we'll add those to our event list.
And Baztec is BAZTECMN.com. If people listening, So a lot of our audience will be listening. They don't watch it as much.
Sure.
So I want to make sure they just knew that. So
appreciate it.
That's pretty cool. So, and I think it's great. And you make a good point about, you know, there are a lot of fishing opportunities near most people's houses, and we all drive all over, and that's fun too. I mean, it is fun to go do a destination trip. I am going to go to Mille Lacs. I'm going to go to Red Lake. I'm going to go try to catch a big bluegill in Bemidji, Minnesota. Like, that's cool, right? That's fun. But I think what you're getting at is, like, you know, don't look past some of the lakes near your houses.
Yeah.
And yeah, it may not be the biggest fish you've ever caught, but I've honed my skills honestly on less than average fish. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people listening probably would say the same thing.
Sure.
Whether you're a bass angler, a wall angler, a pan fisherman, right? You've probably honed your skills on less than average size fish. Definitely not trophy fish.
No.
That's not. I don't think there's anyone out there that can honestly say, even KVD, that he honed his skills catching trophy bass every day. You hone your skills by getting out there and doing it, and oftentimes repetition. I think oftentimes the best way to build confidence, and I'll tell this to anybody, is to get on a bite.
Yep, feel it.
It doesn't need to be all 13-inch crappies. You get on a bite. Bald eagle's a great example, right? I remember honing my skills on 8 and 9-inch crappies on Bald Eagle Lake. Now maybe when you get a little further down the road and you want to challenge yourself a little more, yeah, you branch out, sure, but that's where you hone your skills. That's where you get a feel for a fish, like Drew said, a bite, how a plastic works, how to fish the pinhead, how a spring bobber works, how to detect an up bite. Why am I not getting bit? Well, get that 6-pound test line off. You're fishing for bluegills and crappies, right? Just simple things,
little things.
Downsize to 2 and 3 pound test line, and you just find those ways and those nuances that work for you. And I think, Ray, you nailed it. Like, you can hone that bite probably right down the street, especially here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in the metro, we are so spoiled. Like, we hear it all the time from people that come in and go, wow. Then we have one lake within an hour. I hear from some people in other states. I got one lake we can fish in an hour. I could imagine having one lake in an hour. I mean, we're pretty
very
fortunate.
lucky.
Pretty
Very
fortunate.
Hey, Ray, why don't you, first of all, I just want to thank you guys. I'm super excited to team up with Ray and, have the first Latino pro staff. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
I really am. But Ray, why don't you tell them how you came up with the name Baztec?
Oh, Baztec. Yeah, I get that question quite a bit, and it's pretty simple. It's my background, my heritage, my Baztec heritage, Aztec heritage, and the great Aztec people of Tenochtitlan. They were before the Romans, before a lot of other civilizations. They were the top civilization in the world, which they lived in Lake Texcoco, which is a huge lake. That's what Mexico City is on. And I wish I could have fished that. That would have been cool, man, because I'm sure it was loaded with big old bass, And so I took that name from my heritage, and the fish that I love to chase around, bass, and I just kind of fuse them together. And I just saw it one day. Someone told me, my mentor, big shout out to him. He's like, you need to brand yourself, and you need something simple. You need a simple name, And I was like, and it just hit me. It's Baztec, Just one day it just hit me, just real simple. And that's where the origin of the name came from. It's my heritage and the favorite fish I like to chase around, man.
Perfect.
Do you still bass fish a ton?
I do, yeah. So what I do now, I'm very fortunate. I got to fish with some great people, some great pros and some great people out here in Minnesota and outside of Minnesota. And what I do now, I'm more dedicated to my team, and I think it's more important to pass on what I've learned from other folks. Like, what Drew was talking about earlier, like when Rose won the championship, and he gave credit to everyone else because it was the culmination of all those things that made him good, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And I think for me, what's important is I want to replace myself, and I started a junior pro staff because of that. So I want to give a shout out to one of our junior pro staff who's hopefully going to be listening to this. He's a young kid, and his name's Austin. And that guy, he's going to be a star. He's a special kid. And we're going to be adding more junior pro staff, to that, because that's the future. And we're not going to be here forever. And all the gifts that we have, all the gifts, God gave all of us gifts, and they're all free. Mm-hmm. So let's give them away, So what my purpose now is to keep doing community outreach, but also to pass on that knowledge. So to answer your question, yes, still bass fish a lot, but what I really do with my staff individually, and I'll be doing this with Phil, is we will go out and I will be teaching technique by technique, and you'll get I don't know, 6, 8, 10 hours out is however long your wife lets you stay out with me, and pass that knowledge down, man.
Yeah.
We fished. I live a mile from the river, so I'm a river rat. We fished the Mississippi from 694 south to all the way downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah.
You could see me down
good
there all
fishing.
the time. It's
Good
crazy.
smallies, yeah.
It's if you guys ever want to go, man. It's wild, man.
Twist my arm.
Yeah, come on, man. All right, fine. Yeah.
Matt, when you're guiding, do you get people who ask just to learn techniques, or are they just wanting to catch fish, or they want to run your boat? I
would say, I'm entering my 23rd year guiding. It's been a while, and I'd say a lot of my clients now are repeat.
Yeah.
I don't do it full time anymore.
Sure.
So a lot of them are clients I've had for years. I had one guy guided last year. True story. His son was with his son. We were fishing, and the dad's like, "You mind if I have a beer in the boat?" I'm like, "I don't care. Knock yourself out." And he leans over to his kid and he goes, "You want one?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Wait a second. Can he drink a beer?" He's like, "Yeah, he just turned 21 last week." I guided that guy when his wife was pregnant with that kid.
What?
He's one of my first 3 clients I ever had.
Wow.
And now here the guy is giving his son a beer legally in my boat.
Wow.
And I looked at him, I said, I guided you when your wife was pregnant with him?
Wow.
And he's like, "You're right." And that was like an aha moment for me. But to answer Drew's question, like 100%, like I'm big on, you are booking me for education.
Mm-hmm.
This is a seminar. Fishing's great. I've had clients that reach out and are like, "Hey, can you put me on a limit of crappies?" Oftentimes I don't take that client. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I pass them to somebody else. Like I want the clients that are like, "Never fish plastics. I want you to teach me how to do it."
Right.
You know what? I want to drop shot. I've never drop shot it for bass. It intimidates me. No problem. So like I always try to sit down with my clients, a lot of times virtually, email, maybe a message. What are the 5, 8, 10 questions you want answered on your 5 hours of fishing with me? And then based on those questions, then I will structure the day. Okay, we're going bass fishing. You know what? We're going to change gears and we're going to go fish bluegills, because based off of what you asked me, I think this is going to be the best plan of attack for you to get better at this, because they may want to learn all about fishing with electronics, or boat control.
Right.
And depending on the time of year, I may go, we're chasing crappies. So education is 100% the main focus for sure. And we got to catch fish. Don't get me wrong. Any guy that's like, "Oh, the fishing doesn't matter," they're lying.
Yeah.
Any guy that says that it doesn't matter. Like, I try to make fishing a bonus, where I'll give you enough on a day in the boat that fishing would be a bonus. But if you catch nothing, you probably, with all due respect, shouldn't be a guide. And now we're gonna have those days, right? But if you're consistently not catching much, being a fishing guide probably shouldn't be your profession.
I like
Safe to
fishing, but I love catching.
That's right. That's right.
Everyone
Right,
does.
right.
You need to, because Drew's made a point earlier about, learning. You got to bend the rod a bit if you're truly going to put all the pieces together. Otherwise, you continue to question things like, did we do everything right? We didn't catch anything. So if you technically do everything right, you should catch something. So there needs to be a conclusion to the formula, I think, at some point.
Every time in the summer, I like to try to catch a big fish. Like I would be probably a bad guide, because I'm like, if I catch 2 big ones today, I'm doing it good, right? And a lot of times I just don't. And then I'm like, man, am I this bad at fishing? And I'm like, no, I need to go back to my juice and just set the hook on 50 bass, even if they're 2-pounders. And then you like build your confidence again. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how to fish that crankbait. Like
And you're back to being a good guide.
And then I'm back to being a guide myself. Like, wake up, dude. Come on. You know how to do this stuff.
Yeah. It's funny, like I have my staff sometimes like, "You don't want to fish? You sure? You sure don't want to fish?" And I'm like, no, you keep going. Because I can see things that they do really well, things that, they need more work with and stuff like that. And then I'm like, I wonder what sometimes I'll position the boat inside of the edge so they can, if they're throwing something, they can like, wait, I have to adjust. I'm going to kick it back out a little bit, and I watch them. But that's how you get good, and it takes time. It takes time, and it's such an honor, because they have no idea how much that means to me. They have no idea. They're going to be listening to this, and they're gonna figure, hear me say it. But I learned so much from them, and it's such an honor to like teach them, because that's everything. In my opinion, that's like so special to be able to teach that, to pay that forward is awesome. And when Austin, he hooked into his first, I think we were using a wacky worm. He never used a wacky worm. He loves throwing crankbaits. Now that he caught his like a 3 or 4 pounder, so that's all he throws now. And I'm like, you got to use, you could use other stuff, but he loves the crankbait. And he, off the river, he caught a big old 4.5. I mean, this thing was massive. He could barely hold it up, man, and those are the moments, and I'm just so proud of them, and moving forward, that's what we're going to be focusing on, is the future of Baztec, future generations. And with Phil on board, we literally got much stronger, and we're going to be doing a lot more outreach. So
good. We've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, hold on. I've got more stuff to talk about here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Phil, you've been catching crappies. I've seen on social media. How many times have you been on the ice this year?
Not enough.
Really?
Literally,
Mostly local. Like, let's talk ice fishing here. Like, are you? Because there's no ice, I'm assuming, right now today where you're by the metro, right?
correct. Yep.
So did you have an influx of ice earlier in the year that you fished, or?
Well, it was then the day after we did the snow dog and bulldog on Rush Lake.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do so good on Rush Lake. I mean, the fish were super spooky.
They were hyper speed.
I mean, your cleats and so forth, making the noise and so forth. And we would see them on our, Vexlars and so forth, and Panoptics or forward facing sonar. Thank you. And then they just scatter. Mm-hmm. So I did hit the night bite. I came back, was in Rush Lake, and then came back to a metro lake, and literally just hit it at the right time, right? Literally, the sun was the perfect time, sunset. And I was using plastics, and I had a white Wonder Bread jig head, and I had a purple Mackie on, and they didn't like that color, and I switched to I think it was white. I switched to white, and bam, bam, bam. It was so much fun. It was I wouldn't say it was one after another, but it was a steady bite for about a half an hour, and then that was it.
That window bite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also fished the St. Croix as well, and that's where I was getting some of my white crappies and so forth. You got to be really careful on the St. Croix, of course. Use caution. And
the St. Croix freezes pretty quick, though, doesn't it?
Like freezes before
I think we
a
talked
lot
about
of
this
metro
once
lakes.
on the podcast.
Yeah,
I've been on the St. Croix once. And I'm like, man, you would not believe that this has great ice right now. Like driving trucks, and I'm like, this thing freezes faster than some lakes.
It does, because the water's so cold. It's flowing up north down to the cities and so forth. That literally freezes over almost before any metro lake.
Yeah.
Have you got any sturgeon out there?
Last year I did, not this year. This year I'm going to be the leaderboard.
Yeah,
I will be on the leaderboard.
There you go. You heard it here.
If our listeners could see the look in Phil's face when he made that comment,
very determined.
I think he will be on the leaderboard.
Stern-faced Phil.
Yeah, that'd
Love
be
that.
fun. We should go out there and sturgeon fish.
I've never tried it. I would love
Through
to.
the ice.
That's where the state record is, right? I believe.
Yeah. And you can catch other things
68
out there
or
too.
Oh my gosh, you never know what you're going to catch. I caught that paddlefish with
yeah.
Pat Treader when we were. It was like 7 years ago, New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Through the ice?
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Well, I was ripping. I had a dead stick, 2 dead sticks, and I was ripping and so forth. And paddlefish, they eat plankton or
like
plankton
gill,
and
like
zooplankton.
gill it.
they filter it through. Yeah.
But I only had 4-pound test line and a little crappie jig, because we were going for crappies and sauger and walleye and so forth. And I'm not kidding you, Matt. And I seen this red mark on my Vexlar. I'm like, holy cow, something's big down there. And when I hooked into it, I thought I had a big walleye. I really did. Pat comes running over. Patrick Treader comes running over, and I'm fighting it. And I'm like, oh, man. After 10 minutes, I'm like, I got a sturgeon. And I've caught sturgeon by accident down there, at the river fishing and so forth. But after about 25 minutes of fighting this fish,
25 minutes.
finally got it
4-pound line
to the hole.
Line's probably just completely straightened
Wow.
out.
And I'm going to give you the clean version. Pat Treader goes, "Holy cow, you got a monster." And he runs over, grabs his 4-stroke auger, and he comes over. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing? You got a monster." And he starts drilling 5 more
next to
random
you?
holes. Pardon me?
Next to you?
Like right next
Right,
to me.
yeah.
Well,
So you have
my
space.
hole. So my hole,
Yeah.
yeah. And then he drills 5 additional
Oh,
holes.
man.
And I fought it for about another 25 minutes. I tightened up the drag because my hands were freezing. And so I'm fighting it because he's going south. He's going with the river, flow of the river and so forth.
Mhm.
And I got it up to the hole. And Pat Treader's like, he's trying to grab it, but he thinks it's a gar. Gar have teeth and so forth. So I threw my rod down and I grabbed it. And then I grabbed it and got like the snot out and so forth. And then he jumped on the ice and he took the other half of it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's laying on the ice. I'm like, I didn't know what a paddlefish was. I'd never seen one before.
What is this thing?
And I'm like, what is this?
You grabbed it by the bill?
I did. The
Okay.
bill and the
'cause
bill and the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Have you met Patrick Treader?
No.
This had to have been a scene. This is.
I don't think I've met the
I know.
gentleman.
I know Patrick.
It was
Yeah,
a
he's
blank
awesome.
show, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And there was only one other guy. His name was Luke. The only reason I remember that is because I have a good friend named Luke, and he was about 30 yards away, and he's ripping for walleyes and stuff. And after 5 minutes of hooting or hollering, we got to get it back in the the river right away because it's a protected species. But I got a couple photos with it, and he comes running over. He goes, "Holy crap! I thought you had a dead body, reeled in a dead body." And
Oh my
I
God.
Yeah, it was insane.
Those
What
things
was-
are awesome.
What was the size of it, man? Phil?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't have a tape
You
measure,
know, but
so
it was pretty good size.
I'm gonna send the photo in the DNR and see
Yeah.
if they can kind of give me an accurate weight and size
Sure.
and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Mario. Since we know some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I waited so long. I'm always just curious. It's got to be 60 pounds at least.
Is there
fiberglass replica would be
Pretty
amazing
cool.
of a fish like that, especially with the story you have. Like, I think that'd be the coolest looking replica in the ever to have that thing. I don't know what it would cost. I'm sure someone could do it. I've seen paddlefish on the wall before, so I know it's that would be just something. I mean, never again will that happen.
Right. Oh,
We're safe
gosh,
to
no.
say, right? Never again will
No.
that happen.
Wow.
That's what I mean. That's you never know what you're going to catch on the river. And
Yep.
surprisingly, my wife Jane, she gave me permission to get a replica. If you can
Yeah.
believe that,
Yeah.
because
Wow.
she hangs all the stuff on the walls, and she's a neat
You
freak.
should.
And
You should.
So any other fish would probably have to go in the garage, but she's giving me the okay to get.
I
For
think
a
that
paddlefish?
would be
Oh,
sweet.
dude. Come on, Phil.
Yeah.
You got to do it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That would be pretty epic.
Yeah, it's
A paddlefish with his mouth open and then a piece of pickled pizza right in front of his face.
and I was supposed to bring my wife home. That's what my intention was to bring. That's what the second slice was for. It was for my wife because I
Oh,
knew
yeah.
the line was going to be 2 hours long every time you go there.
Yep.
But like an hour and a half of sitting in the trailer where the water is and all that, probably getting 70, 80 degrees. And I'm like, I probably shouldn't bring that home to my wife. So I ate it.
Sacrifices you make,
Yeah.
Phil. The sacrifices you make.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get back on the ice again soon. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to venture over to the St. Croix River. That sounds intriguing. It's been years since I ice fished it. Used to do it a decent amount. We never caught anything crazy like a paddlefish, but we caught some saugers, some walleyes, some decent craw. I remember the crappie bite 10, 15 years ago was good. Like a lot of 11, 12-inch crappies, like good average. So that intrigues me. And yeah, you're right, Drew. I mean, I never thought of it that way because every time I've ice fished the St. Croix, it was the dead of winter. But I do remember now, like, being shocked at how much ice there was. Because all the rivers I usually fish, there's not a lot of ice.
Oh, there's a boat. Usually a boatload.
And driving your truck on a river usually is unheard of. But in
Yeah.
the St. Croix,
Right. Oh, yeah.
Lake St. Croix is kind of the body of water you're fishing, right?
Correct.
So it does set up like a lake. But yeah, it's Shantytown, USA. I remember the years I went, there's people all over the place having fun catching fish.
There's the power plant deals there too, right? And people
Correct.
fish outside of that.
Correct.
Sturgeon,
The
maybe.
warm discharge
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so forth. Yep.
See, that freaks me out too. I remember the first and only time I was on the St. Croix River, we pulled up to the access and the guy's like, "Yeah, we're just gonna drive out." I'm like, what? Like right in a truck? He's like, yep. Oh, yeah, we'll be good. People have been driving over it for a couple weeks now. Yeah. And I'm like, looking, there's no trail or anything. He goes, the snow's not that deep. We'll be fine. I'm like, okay, but you go first.
Right.
And we drove like a mile. No problem. Like, this is bizarre to me. Like, it goes against everything you really were ever told about ice safety and rivers and current. And here we are on the St. Croix River driving, trucks.
I have to amplify what you just said. So when I moved here about 98, I had some professors that, I've always been an outdoorsman, hunt and fished all my life. And, you make buddies and stuff, share the same interests and made some friends. And first time I wanted to go ice fishing, I was like, I'm finally made it in Minnesota, man. I'm going to go ice fishing. I had done ice fishing in Illinois and whatnot, but it was something different here, right? So my buddies like, you want to go ice fishing? I was like, absolutely, man. So my first experience, right? I'm in the truck with him, and he's, oh yeah, I drive out to him, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna drive out on the lake, and I was like, what? Drive out on the lake? And he was like, I was like, okay. I'd seen it in the movies, Grumpy Old Man and stuff like that, But then it's happening, right? And I'm a freshman in college, and I'm like, man, what's going on here? So, and this is an elder guy, so he knew, I knew he knew what he was doing. So all of a sudden, we're driving. We're like literally about to get on the lake. I forgot what lake we were on. It might have been Bald Eagle or White Bear or something like that. And all of a sudden, he puts the windows down. And I'm like, why are you putting the windows down, man? And he's like, just in case we fall through, man. That freaked me out. Yeah, I was like, what?
Unbuckle.
I know. Exactly.
That was what we did. Unbuckle and put the windows down. As a kid, my dad would always say the same thing.
Yeah, it freaked me out. I never heard. I mean, who does that, right?
Yeah.
Ice fishermen do that.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience doing that. And I was like, this guy's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But we had a good time. I mean, there was a lot of ice on. There's other trucks on there, but for somebody who's never done that, who experienced that was kind of like an oh crap moment. Like, oh my God. Yeah. This is like kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because it's serious.
Well, yeah.
Like you have a grown man telling you, yeah, take your seatbelt off and putting down the windows, and you're like, why are you doing that? What's wrong with you?
Just in case we go through, you got to climb out.
Yeah. And then you hear that, and then you're like, what?
Yeah.
Oh God. So that's what I just wanted to share.
Yeah.
Because you're right. On rivers
are freaky right now with the warm weather that the ice belt has had. Like, just basic 101 safety precautions are super important.
Yeah.
Ice picks, chisel, throw rope. I mean, I was talking about, maybe grabbing a snow dog and going out this weekend, or a small 4-wheeler or something. And I'm like, I can still walk. Like, the lakes don't have much snow on them. Like, it's nothing to walk, even a mile right now pulling a fish trap, in my opinion. Like, because you can pull with one finger if you really want.
It's good exercise.
Yeah. Great exercise. Yeah, we've been sitting here talking all day. I need to move, right, Phil? Work off that pizza.
Yeah, Culver's is sitting in my stomach.
Oh my God.
Another piece of advice I think this time of year, or this year, I should say, that we shouldn't take for granted is, just because it's January doesn't mean the ice is X amount of inches thick, right? Case in point, this season, we are going to have first ice again in mid-January.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen situations in the past where said anglers may have a bad experience on the ice with their vehicle falling through, because their exact words to the sheriff after it happens is, well, it's January. I always drive in January, right? I mean, we chuckle and laugh,
right?
But the people are like, it's January. I should be able to drive my truck out. Well, why should you be able to drive your truck out in January? What scientific proof is there that you should be? There is none. You need to know what the ice conditions are. Like to Drew's point, you check the ice, you do some due diligence, and you go out there and you have a very successful and safe ice fishing experience.
Yep.
And what will happen now in the next couple of weeks, and we just talked about it in a marketing meeting as a team today for Clam, we're going to treat this next series as second first ice. We're going to go out with spud bars. We're going to have our float suits on. We're going to have our throw rope. We're going to go as a team. We're going to do our homework. We're not going to take any risks. We're going to do the same thing we did a few weeks ago. And we had very safe experiences on the ice and productive experiences on the ice. You don't need to be scared. You just have a little common sense. And at the end of the day, I've always told people, if you have to walk up to the edge of the ice and scratch your head and go, probably don't go. Give it a few more days, right?
Right.
A couple more days makes a big difference this time of year. So, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good reminder, Drew. Safety first.
Yeah.
Practice that stuff, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would say too, if you are on ice, like even if it's super safe ice, like Red Lake is a prime example right now, like it can change when you're on the ice. So you can spud your way out, have phenomenal ice the whole way, no problem. But like you never know when the wind changes, a crack opens up, the sun is beaten down for a little too long, your holes open up. Like just be aware of everything that's going on. Don't just think, oh, I got out this morning, I'm fine all day.
Yeah.
Didn't that happen to you, Matt, like a couple years ago on Mille Lacs? Didn't you say there was like a crack that opened up?
Yeah, Mille Lacs, we went out late ice, took wheelers out, couldn't drive our trucks out, and on the way back, we had to find a different path off because a little heave crack that we hopped in the morning that was locked up, it got back into the 20s the night before everything hardened up. Well, we fished all day. It was 50 degrees out, I remember.
Oh, wow.
We were chasing tulipies.
The days are longer.
Yeah,
too,
we were
late
fishing
ice.
all day, and we 20 of us. And we had 10 machines out there. I mean, there was 16 inches of ice on the lake.
Yeah.
And we came back, and I'm like, that crack is now 6 feet wide. So we had to go about a mile west to get back off the ice.
Oh, wow.
You know, so to Drew's point, like, it happened that quick. And we went out 2 miles to go fishing. We're on Mille Lacs.
Sure.
We went out to a couple of the mud flats, the first mud. So we were a ways out. It's not like we could see this crack opening. And by the time we came back, it was like, oh, boy.
Yeah.
We got to find a different way off the ice. So yeah, things can absolutely change, especially late ice. Things can change as you get those really warm high sun days.
Yeah. There's a lot of tools too that you don't have to be on the ice that'll help you. Like today I was looking at a satellite image of just like Minnesota from the last couple of days, and I'm like, oh wow, that lake still has wide open water even though it's up north. Like probably should not go there, or at least be extremely cautious, or call your bait shops, call a buddy, like use your resources essentially.
Yeah. Yep. To your point, Matt and Drew, don't fish history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's case in point. Like be safe, use your common sense. Just because I always come out in January with my truck.
Yeah.
Really? You're fishing. That was last year.
Yep.
Right. This is this year.
Every year's different.
Every year's different. Don't
And the
fish
lake,
history.
And the lake across the street might be different than the lake you're on.
Correct.
Right.
We've all seen that.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna. Well, I'll say it anyway. The float suits do work. The ice hammer float suits do work. It was my own fault, but I fell in with a friend 4 years ago. We were fishing a lake, a metro lake, and my friend and I, we went out after work fishing, and it was, of course, we left in the daylight. We had to walk out there and so forth, and there was a ice heave in the center of the lake, and we got to the ice heave, and my friend Todd, he jumped over the ice heave first with the sled. Then I jumped over second, and we had ropes. We were just pulling a small sled and so forth, and he was pulling his one-man ice house. But we had to go all the way to the other side of the lake. Fast forward, we both got over the ice ridge safely. We fished till dusk, till dark. And when we came back, we didn't follow our same tracks and so forth. And this time, I jumped over the ice ridge first. And when I jumped over, I went right through. I mean, there was no...
It's like you jumped into a pool.
It literally was. That's exactly what it was. And I went into about here, about chest. I had the bibs on in the jacket, and I didn't get wet. The only thing, I jumped through, and I did panic for probably about 10 seconds. But I previously watched videos what to do if you fall through. You turn around where you came from. You take your ice picks and you kick till you get out. And that's exactly what I did. Well, my friend threw me his rope, but I got out right away. Shortly thereafter and so forth. And what I'm trying to articulate is those ice suits, they work.
Yeah.
They work.
Yeah.
Float suits are huge.
Yep.
In case, like you said, I mean, you're a seasoned ice angler. Like, things happen, right? And having those safety tools. And kudos to your friend, chucking the rope at you right away, too. I mean, that's one of the most fundamental tips I can give you at early ice is to not go alone.
100%.
Right.
I mean, that alone, to have a buddy with you that has a throw rope, like, things can happen, this or that, whatever. And again, we're not saying anything to scare anybody. I mean, things can happen. But just to have a buddy there with you that each of you have a throw up, each of you have ice picks around your neck, each of you have a float suit. Like if the situation does happen, you know, you can safely get yourself out, just like you did.
Yeah.
You know, collect yourself, remember what needs to be done, and you get out. And I've fallen through, not happy about it many times over. I mean, it's been a while. You know, I used to be a little more reckless than I am now. You know, tying yourself to a tree on land and walking out, and I mean, just stupid stuff. But you just be safe about it. So yeah, float suits are good. But
yeah,
man,
there's awesome videos online too about what to do if you fall through. That's probably not one you want to, you know, have people do at the seminars and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you watch some, go online, search, you know, what to do if you fall through the ice. There's some amazing videos. And I think the number one thing that I've seen, at least, and Phil, you just talked about, is don't panic. When you panic, it seems from what I've seen on these videos, you'll lose it. You'll stop thinking. You'll exert your energy, where if you just, hey, I'm going to be cold here, but all right, how do we get out of this mess, right? That seems like the number one way. Yeah. I've not personally fallen through, so I can't really give my own insight, but
it's true. Like I panicked for like 10 seconds, and my friend Todd says, calm down, you're going to be all right. And then I did. I literally calmed down. He threw me the rope, but I didn't grab it. I just turned around where we came from and just ice picked out and kicked. And the only thing that was wet was my feet. I was dry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's one of the situations you never want to be in, but yeah, having the tools and the sound mind to get yourself out is vitally important. But yeah, I don't know, man. We could sit and talk. Four of us could talk forever.
Yeah. No
I mean, we're an hour and 36 minutes into some fun. So, I mean, do you guys have any parting words, anything you want to leave our listeners with before we sign off, or any last goodbyes, shout outs?
Well, again, I'm extremely, extremely excited to be the first Latino team, ice team, for Clam and for Baztec. I'm extremely happy to partner with Ray. He's the real deal. Yeah, he's the real deal.
I appreciate it, and thank you to Clam for the opportunity. Matt, Drew, I mean, you guys doing all this for us. We really appreciate it. We want to take Clam and want to do we want to do great things with it in the Latino community. And with Phil, with your support, we are definitely going to accomplish that, and it's going to be a lot of fun doing it. Lastly, I like to say that we will be having Baztec Ice Team will be having a podcast out of my studio in my house, you know, so we're going to be doing that, and we'd love to bring you guys on, you know, as guests and stuff, and talk about different things on the podcast. You know, I have a list of things that we like to talk about, you know, and the cool thing about podcasts is that can always change. You know, you can change things up, you know. But yeah, that'll be starting probably in the next week or two here. So, yeah. So look out for that.
That'll be awesome.
We'll hop on a podcast.
I feel like the goal of the Ice Team podcast, or we've said from day one, is to highlight. We have so many awesome pro staff members, and they all have a story, and that's what we do here. And we talk ice fishing, obviously, and other ramble on about stuff. But I don't know, that'd be sweet to hop on a different podcast and go down a different route too.
I like it.
We can drink some Grain Belt beer. Yeah, because we're also sponsored by Grain Belt. So Shell's Brewing Company. Big shout out to them. Yeah, and they're supporters. They're a great supporter of ours. So yeah, it's always good talking fishing and talking ice fishing and drinking some beer.
Fishing, cold beer, dill pickle pizza.
Oh,
maybe?
We're making that pizza.
I mean, where are we gonna get that? Where are we gonna get that this time of year, Phil? Where do you get that pizza?
Well, now you have to go to off of Century Avenue by Lakewood Community College, or I don't even think they call it Lakewood anymore. What do they call it? Century College. There's a place right off of 694 in like Century. There's a place that makes pickle pizza.
Oh,
wow.
That kind of sounds good. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Follow along Baztec, Baztec. mn.com.
That's right.
Check them out. If you can be involved, if you know of someone that wants to get involved in fishing and can make some connections with either of these two, reach out.
Yeah, please. Absolutely.
Social media?
Yeah, we have Baztec MN. That's our IG.
Okay.
You know, and then Facebook is, I just believe it's just Baztec, Baztec Inc. You know? Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, so follow along on that. Give them a like, give them a share with your buddies, and I'm excited. First ice again, Phil.
Amen.
How awesome is that?
Yeah,
First
that's
ice.
We
cool.
get to have first ice
You
again.
guys are also the first podcast of 2024.
Oh,
There you
wow.
go.
Cool,
Congratulations.
man.
Yeah, kick-
Awesome.
kick
back
things
at
off.
it.
Awesome, you guys.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. So another
There we go.
episode of the Ice Team podcast. Ray and Phil, we had a whole lot of fun chatting. Listen to this one, and we'll catch you next time.